Have you ever prayed with all your heart, only to be met with silence? Have you ever asked God for help, for guidance, for a sign, and then waited day after day, week after week, wondering if He even heard you? If that's where you are today, this message is for you. Because one of the hardest experiences in the Christian life is learning how to trust God when He seems silent. It's easy to have faith when prayers are answered quickly. It's easy to trust when doors are opening, blessings are flowing, and life is moving in the direction we hoped for. But what about the seasons when nothing changes? What about the moments when you're praying for healing and the pain remains? When you're praying for a breakthrough and the door stays closed? When you're asking for direction and heaven feels quiet? Those are the moments that test faith. And maybe that's exactly where you are today. Maybe you're carrying a burden nobody knows about. Maybe you're smiling on the outside while fighting a battle on the inside. Maybe you're tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of wondering. Tired of hoping. And if we're honest, maybe part of you is asking a question you've never said out loud. God, where are you? But before you give up, I want you to remember something powerful. God's silence is not God's absence. Just because you cannot see Him moving doesn't mean He has stopped working. Think about Joseph. Joseph received a dream from God. A promise. A glimpse of a future that seemed incredible. But after the dream came betrayal. His brothers turned against him. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison. And for years, it looked as though God's promise had failed. Imagine Joseph sitting alone in that prison cell. Imagine the questions running through his mind. Imagine the prayers. Imagine the silence. Yet what Joseph could not see was that God was arranging circumstances behind the scenes. Every delay had a purpose. Every setback had meaning. Every painful chapter was preparing him for the palace. And perhaps God is doing something similar in your life right now. Because sometimes the greatest miracles happen where nobody can see them. We want immediate answers. But God often works through preparation. We want quick solutions. But God is interested in transformation. And transformation takes time. Consider a seed. When a seed is planted, nothing appears to happen at first. Days pass. Weeks pass. The ground looks exactly the same. But underneath the surface, something powerful is taking place. Roots are growing. Strength is developing. Life is forming. And one day, what was invisible becomes visible. Maybe your faith feels buried today. Maybe your prayers feel buried. Maybe your dreams feel buried. But buried does not mean dead. Sometimes buried means planted. And what God plants, He intends to grow. David understood this. Before he became king, David spent years in uncertainty. He knew God's promise. Yet his reality looked completely different. He was hunted, rejected, forced to hide, living in caves, waiting for a future that seemed farther away every day. But during those lonely years, God was shaping David into the king he would become. And maybe God is shaping you too. Not punishing you, not ignoring you, preparing you, preparing your character, preparing your faith, preparing your future. The truth is that many of the blessings we ask for require a version of ourselves that does not yet exist. That's why waiting seasons matter. Because God isn't only working on the blessing. He's working on the person who will receive it. And sometimes that's the part we don't understand. We focus on what we want God to do around us. Meanwhile, God is focused on what He wants to do within us. Maybe today you're facing fear. Fear about finances. Fear about your future. Fear about your family. Fear about something nobody else knows. Fear has a way of making God's silence feel louder. It whispers lies. It tells us we're alone. It tells us nothing will change. It tells us God has forgotten us. But fear is not the voice of God. Faith speaks differently. Faith says, I don't understand this season, but I trust God. Faith says, I don't see the answer yet, but I believe God is working. Faith says, the story isn't over. And if you're listening right now, I want to remind you of something. Your story is not over. The chapter you're living is not the final chapter. The disappointment is not the conclusion. The waiting is not the ending. God is still writing. God is still moving. God is still working. Even now. Even today. Even in ways you cannot see. Think about Job. Few people suffered more deeply than Job. Everything seemed to fall apart. Loss after loss. Pain after pain. Question after question. And yet Job discovered something profound. God was present even when he seemed silent. In fact, some of the greatest revelations came after the darkest moments. And that principle still applies today. Sometimes the season that feels like destruction becomes the beginning of restoration. Sometimes the season that feels like loss becomes the path to blessing. Sometimes the season that feels like silence becomes the moment God is preparing something extraordinary. That's why you cannot judge your future by your current circumstances. What you see today is not all there is. God sees the whole picture. He sees tomorrow. He sees next year. He sees opportunities you don't know exist. He sees answers that are already on the way. And because he sees what you cannot see, he asks you to trust him. Not because everything makes sense, but because he is faithful. And faithfulness is God's nature. God does not abandon his children. God does not forget his promises. God does not stop caring. Even when life becomes difficult. Even when prayers seem unanswered. Even when heaven feels silent. So today, don't let temporary silence convince you of permanent abandonment. Don't let fear define your future. Don't let disappointment destroy your faith. Because God is still working. Behind closed doors. Behind delays. Behind difficulties. Behind circumstances you do not understand. And one day, you'll look back and realize that what felt like God's silence was actually God's preparation. What felt like rejection was protection. What felt like delay was direction. What felt like darkness was the beginning of dawn. So before this message ends, I want you to take a moment. Take a deep breath. And remember this truth. God sees you. God hears you. God loves you. And God is not finished with your story. If this message encouraged you today, write in the comments, "I will trust God." Your comment may encourage someone else who is struggling right now. And if you enjoy faith-filled messages like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Every day, people around the world are fighting silent battles. And together, we can remind them that hope is still alive. Because no matter how silent heaven may seem today, God is still working. Folded hands,